I think there was definitely some element of under coverage of the PPC and Maxime Bernier. Even to be honest, even on our part, I don't think we touched that. We didn't talk too much about Maxime Bernier and the PPC. If you want to compare it to the last election when Maxime Bernier was on the debate stage and all that, we would talk a lot about it. Compared to now, we didn't really cover it much, but they did, raise their support, and especially in the tally of like national votes, at least their percentage. I think it's like a 5.1. So, that's big for their part, the PPC party and Maxime Bernier. But again, nobody won their seat, and not even their Maxime Bernier won his seat. But I think what is interesting is, like you said, I'm bringing it back to party fragmentation, because you see that the PPC actually had, I would say, an impact on the election. Again, all the votes are not really make a full analysis of what exactly happened, but you look at a place like, let's say, Cambridge, the riding in Cambridge, where the difference between the conservative and the liberal MP who ended up winning, I believe it's like 2,000 votes. And you look at the votes that the PPC candidate got in that riding, that PPC candidate got 3.5 thousand votes. So 3,500, around 3,500 votes. So stuff like that, when you start looking at those margins, because the margin between conservative and liberal was 2K, and you see the PPC candidate got 3.5K, you look at that, you're like, did the PPC influence what happened in Cambridge? Could the conservative have won that seat were it not for the PPC candidate running, in that riding? Or even I was just looking also at Kitchener South. Kitchener South, the difference between the liberal and conservative candidate is like 700 votes or whatever. And the PPC candidate, you look at there in Kitchener South, PPC candidate had like 3.2K votes. So if you look at stuff like that, it's like the PPC, it really looks like they had an impact, especially on conservatives. It seems like they're taking some votes away. Again, those votes for the PPC might be people that don't necessarily vote, but now that the PPC is out here and they finally had a rallying cry, maybe they came to vote. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those PPC votes translate to conservative votes, but just in terms of probability, you have to believe that at least a good amount of these votes that could have helped the conservatives win, especially Kitchener South. It's 700, 800 votes difference between conservative and liberal. Especially in Kitchener South, you look at it, you're like, a conservative could have won that seat were it not for Maxime Bernier and the PPC. So I did find that very, very interesting. But again, I think one thing you brought up earlier, and I'm going to bring it back, is in the next election cycle, maybe they won't have that rallying cry that they had, which was COVID, the mask, and then the vaccination passport. They might not have that, and that played a huge, huge role in Maxime Bernier being able to galvanize the PPC base. Going into the next election, he's gonna have to find, if we're at that point we're not really dealing with COVID as much, he's gonna have to find something else to galvanize the PPC base, right? Before this election, back in 2019, the rallying cry, I think at that point, just from what I remember, because we talked a bit about this, I think a lot of it was like free speech and et cetera, right? That was more, I think, one of his main messages, like being able to think freely and et cetera. That was one of his things he would always mention. And I remember him and Jagmeet Singh went back and forth about it. He was like, Jagmeet Singh, you only agree with people that have the same thoughts as you and whatever. So it was, Jagmeet Singh was like, you don't deserve a platform, et cetera, et cetera. But I do find it interesting what happened with the PPC on election night. I'm wondering, though, if they're going to have something to galvanize the base in the next election the way they had in this election.
Yeah, and I feel like they also need some other new faces, especially like charismatic English speaking candidates, like Maxime Bernier is a seasoned politician. I think he can do well in Quebec, although I'm not sure like how well he can do, because he's not even winning his own seat in Beauce, where he's from. So like as a general rule, Quebec is has been quite left leaning this couple of years, so like to swing to like the further right than the conservative is kind of a hard task. So that's why I think like I believe like he should try to concentrate and even try to win a seat in Alberta or something, just like do what I think Derek Sloan tried to do the same thing, so just
Hmm.
change your writing because I feel like he could have more support over there. And
Jagmeet
even
Singh
if
did
they
that. Jagmeet Singh
exactly,
went to Burnaby.
yeah, Burnaby and I believe didn't Annamie Paul do the same thing? Didn't she switch her writing? I'm not too sure.
Oh, I don't know. All I know is that she should have never been running in Toronto Center, but I'll let you finish your point and we'll go to that.
Yeah, but I feel like but that's what Bernier should be trying to do. Like, first of all, try to win one seat. That will increase your visibility. Whenever you're in Parliament in question period, you just say whatever you
Mhm.
want, and that thing, whatever if however extreme or however charismatic it is, it's gonna be on TV, and like the news will love it, like they love extreme people, they love like
Mhm.
bombastic people like Trump. That's why like the, the cable news did so well. And
Mhm.
so I think he should first of all try to win a seat, and then from there he can grow the party, because as I said on the Six Sense Report episode that we did a couple of days ago, visibility is the most important thing in politics. If you're not visible, like you're gonna have a tough time. But in terms of how and whether they were undercovered, I think they were. I think the biggest issue was the fact that he wasn't invited in the debates. I think that was the biggest issue. But in terms of the coverage, like they didn't have a lot of support at the beginning of the race, like
Mhm.
when the conservatives were leading, when like the conservatives started leading the liberals, like they didn't have a lot of support. They were like 1-2%, and then as the race tightened, you saw a lot of people, and then that's when the vaccine passport thing came up. That's when you saw them rise, in terms of popularity, and that happened literally, I believe, just before or right after the debates. That's when they even surpassed Bloc Québécois at some point in the like the percentage share of votes, like according to the polls, so there was that weird dynamic. I would understand if they complained, but also it wasn't like it was like a systemic, like discrimination against the